Executives and employees of the Chonghae-jin Marine Office have committed a grave sin. We sincerely apologize to the victims and their families, as well as people of the country.
Just heard an apology from the ferry company president as about 270 people, most of them high school students, remain lost aboard that sunken ferry.
Now, CNN has just obtained a transcript from the first frantic moments after that vessel began to roll. Someone aboard the ferry called the Traffic Services Center in Jeju at about 8:55 a.m. Wednesday. Then 5 minutes later, the dispatcher advised that people should put on life vests and prepare to abandon ship.
But it wasn't until another 5 minutes passed that the traffic center reported it, quote, just notified Coast Guard.
Joining us now is Kim Petersen. He's Governor Emeritus of the nonprofit Maritime Security Council, President of Security Dynamics. Kim, you have such a breadth of knowledge on situations like this. We're hoping you can explain to us this timeline we just got, because whether it's 5 minutes until they were told to put on life vests or 10 minutes until the Coast Guard responding, you know, to novices, it seems like a long time.
It does, and it's inexplicable at this point. We're still trying to gather as much information as possible, and we're not sure when, in fact, they began to deal with the event after it first occurred. What we've heard from some of the crew members that have been rescued, the captain was brought to the bridge. We know that he was not there at the time that the incident first occurred. They realized that the vessel was imperiled. At that point, apparently, a word went out to the passengers telling them to stay put. That may have been because the captain felt that he was going to be able to stabilize the vessel and perhaps provide a more stable platform from which to launch an evacuation from the vessel. But it soon became readily apparent that the vessel was not going to be stabilized, and that was when the captain should have given the evacuation order. That did not take place, and we're not sure then where in the timeline they contacted VTS, that's the Vessel Traffic Services in Jeju Island, which was the destination of the ship.
Kim, knowing what you know about these kind of scenarios and looking at the scene, we just saw video of the open ocean there, the seas and the currents are strong, the water's murky, we know the temperatures are very low. Given what you know, how likely is it that there could be survivors still under there?
Well, in other cases where vessels have sunk, we've had survivors that have been rescued as long as 3 days out from the incident. But again, a lot depends on the size of the void inside the ship where
and when you talk about the void, you mean like trapped air, right? Right.
That's correct. And so if the area is large enough for survivors to get into, provided that there's enough air so that the oxygen isn't depleted by the people who are occupying that space, and also provided that the individuals are not submerged in the water or wet, because we know that after only a couple of hours, hypothermia is going to set in when people are in water at the temperature that you find here, which is 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
Kim, I want you to break down a little bit of information we just received. The idea that the captain was not at the helm of this ship when it had the incident. The third mate was. Explain to us again, what exactly is a third mate? Is this person qualified to be steering the ship, and is it okay for the captain just to turn over that authority?
Absolutely. The captain can't be on the bridge at all times, and in fact, he has other duties elsewhere in the ship. He has to delegate the responsibility to driving the ship to other deck officers. Now, he can delegate that responsibility, but he can't delegate the authority, but not the responsibility. Ultimately, he is going to be responsible for everything that happens on the ship, and we know now that some of the decisions that the captain made, and we know that this wasn't the normal captain on the ship. He was standing in for the regular ship's captain. He made some critical errors that were compounded over time.
We know that this boat was a combined use ferry and cargo ship. We keep hearing about possible causes, the route change, the sudden turn, cargo not tied down. How could some of that come into play in terms of sinking a ship?
Well, in fact, this is a multi-use ship, as you say. It's called a RoPax, which is a roll-on passenger ferry. So it has not only passengers on board, but it has vehicles and containers, the large TEUs that you typically see on a container ship. And if you look to similar incidents in the past, in 1987, we had the Herald of Free Enterprise, which was a ship that took on water. It also had vehicles, and what you need to understand about these ships is that in order to have vehicles on the vessel, you need a very large deck space, typically close to the waterline. You don't need much of a breach in the hull to introduce water that if you only have 1 to 2 inches of water on the vehicle deck of a row-pack ship such as the Sewol, and as in the case of the Herald of Free Enterprise, in that case, the vessel sunk inside of 90 seconds once water ended up getting into the vehicle deck. And it's something that's called the free surface effect. You have 1 to 2 inches of water that's sloshing around on this very large space inside the vessel. That's enough to destabilize the ship and cause it to go into a critical situation very, very quickly.
Doesn't take much if you're not handling it the right way. Kim Petersen, we're lucky to have you help explain this all to us. Thanks so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
Ahead for us at this hour, the latest developments in the search for Flight 370, the bluefin